Hi, I'm Commander Bruce Volkins with Minneapolis Police Department. I'm the commander of our Juvenile Division, which encompasses our Juvenile Investigation Unit, our Outreach and Diversion Unit, which also has our Police Activities League, School Resource Officers, absentee and missing juveniles investigators, as well as our School Resource Officers.
Welcome. I'm Cynthia Prosek, Executive Director of Restorative Justice Community Action. We're one of the Restorative Justice partner organizations that provide diversion through restorative justice means throughout the Twin Cities, throughout Minneapolis and Hennepin County.
I'm Willie Bridges. I'm the Senior Planning Analyst in the Juvenile Division of the County Attorney's Office, and I coordinate our diversion program, and at Restorative Justice I manage a couple contracts in our office.
Good afternoon, I'm Lena Brazil, Hennepin County Juvenile Probation Officer. I supervise juveniles that are on probation for different levels of offenses, and we'll get more into that a little later.
Hi everyone, I'm Carol Wandersee. I am the Community-Based Array of Services Coordinator in Hennepin County Juvenile Probation. I work with our probation staff to find appropriate resources for our youth and our families, and then also work with our community partners.
Okay, well with that, Commander Fulton, would you mind coming to the podium and delivering your PowerPoint? I'm going to take a seat. If you need anything, I will be right there next to Ms. Barner.
All right, thanks. Just from when a juvenile is arrested by one of our officers what they're doing is they'll make an arrest report for a low-level misdemeanor crime. We ask our police officers to make out an arrest report, but not to fill out a citation for the arrest, so that we can intervene in that and take a look at those cases before the cases would ever be petitioned to the county attorney's office, and screen them for juvenile diversion.
Why is there so much movement? But I get it.
I did shower today. I don't know if I should be offended or what.
It's not about you. Almost.
Before I go forward with Minneapolis Juvenile Diversion and our program, I really have to pay homage to the folks that helped really develop our diversion program a few years back. We had folks from the mayor's office, the Department of Health, Sasha and Josh and Coral and some of their folks helping us out. We had representation from the Minneapolis City Council. Hennepin County Attorney's Office, William Bridges and Tom Arneson have been extremely insightful and helpful in helping develop the Minneapolis Police Department's juvenile diversion program. We've also had folks from Minneapolis Public School District, the Legal Rights Center, Restorative Justice Collaborative, and who I don't have on here. Nope, that is Legal Rights Center, and the Conflict Resolution Center. So we have had a pretty broad group of folks helping us develop the Minneapolis Police Department Juvenile Diversion Program. I will say that this program is fairly new. It's only probably about 4 years old now. We had a juvenile diversion program in the past that we had some problems to it, so we dismantled it, and with the help of these folks, we ended up rebuilding our diversion program. How does this work in Minneapolis? If a youth has been alleged or has alleged to have been engaging in criminal behavior that could lead to a citation, that's a low-level misdemeanor crime where an officer could actually write a ticket to the kid and send the ticket off to the county attorney's office, and would petition it to the county attorney's office for prosecution and for them to deal with it. What we're asking our cops to do again is not to write that citation so that we can screen it for diversion. Over here is Sergeant Catherine Michael. Wave to everybody, please. She's our diversion sergeant. What Catherine does every day is she goes through all the juvenile arrest reports in our police computer reporting system and starts to screen all those juvenile arrests against diversion criteria to find those kids that are eligible for juvenile diversion so that she can make a referral of those cases to the restorative justice. If the youth is eligible for diversion, we send it over to Cynthia Prosek here, and she's our main point of contact to the restorative justice folks, and they're the ones that actually provide our diversion programming for the kids. If the kid gets through the diversion program successfully with Cynthia's folks, That's it, the case is done. We close the case in our police report system, and the case never gets forwarded on for review or adjudication through the county attorney's office or the juvenile justice system. So we try to stop their level of involvement in the criminal justice system as soon as we can if they successfully complete the diversion program. In a very few cases, those cases are where somebody's unsuccessful in their diversion program. If they're unsuccessful, we will refer that case to the juvenile county attorney's office. When we screen these cases, if their case doesn't meet the criteria or the criminal history doesn't meet the criteria for juvenile diversion, for our system, we send the case over to the county attorney's office, and they'll also screen the case for their diversion programming, which I'm sure Willie will talk about. So it's not automatic that they end up getting charged and go to court. They've got a second bite at the diversion apple, so to speak. Our criteria to say whether a kid is eligible for diversion, first you have to be a Minneapolis resident. We believe in Minneapolis with Restorative Justice Partners that a community response is essential in our diversion programming to help these kids get back on track. You have to be between 10 and 17 years old. You cannot be a runaway. It has to be a Minneapolis case because that's what we have jurisdiction over. Right now we don't accept cases from other jurisdictions. It has to be a citable offense, an eligible citable offense. It can't be like a robbery or an aggravated assault where you pull a gun on somebody. It can't be something serious. It's got to be a pretty low-level offense. We got here not assigned to an investigator. We kind of changed that a little bit. In the school district, our SROs, when a kid gets arrested in a school for whatever, let's say it's fighting, a disorderly conduct fighting charge, or an assault 5 fighting charge. We traditionally in the past have always assigned those to our SROs. Originally when we first started diversion here again, those cases were getting kicked out as being non-eligible, which is ridiculous, quite honestly. Just because the SRO was being used to intervene and mentor the kid shouldn't mean that they got kicked out of diversion. So this is it's not assigned to an investigator, it's to one of the criminal investigators in the juvenile investigations unit. And we're even working on that. Sometimes our investigators look at cases because we don't know who the suspect is. Once they find a suspect, if they find out who the suspect is, at that point, if they would at that time be eligible for juvenile diversion, we're really looking at saying we should be assigning those kids to the diversion program. So that not assigned to an investigator is kind of a in limbo type criteria right now. They cannot be in custody. It's a citable offense. No more than 2 prior misdemeanor adjudications. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. No prior gross misdemeanor or felony adjudications either. So that's our basic diversion criteria. What we do, by doing this, we ask Sergeant Michael to collect some data when she does the review of these cases and which cases are getting sent over to Restorative Justice. What we keep on a spreadsheet is the case control number. That's just our police report number. The date of birth of the young person, their race, gender, home zip code, the date of the offense, what the offense is, what alleged crime was committed, who the citing officer was, where the location of the citation or the offense was, and does it meet the probable cause standard. The reason we keep data is because this is the only way we can help guide our work in the future to make ourselves even better at what we're doing. So what we did is we asked Cynthia and her folks to also keep some data for us. We want to know who the justice provider is, or who actually is getting the case over at Restorative Justice, the date that was referred, the date of the first attempted contact, how they're trying to contact the young person to offer diversion to them, how many attempted contacts, how they had tried to get in contact by phone, by showing up at the door, by sending a letter. We want to know how they're trying to contact them. The date that they enroll in diversion, direct victim invited and or participated, service referrals made, yes or no? And the date that they closed, and what was the outcome? Did the kid or the young person pass or complete the diversion program? The reason, again, why we do this is for a lot of different reasons. So we can actually self-judge both with our work group, diversion work group, how are we doing on our juvenile diversion program. When we use this data to help make decisions, we've had some pretty good success in doing this by adjusting some of those criteria, things that we're looking at. We've actually had some pretty good success in really moving the dial a little bit on disparity. For example, if you remember back, it said you couldn't have more than 2 prior misdemeanor adjudications. When we started out our juvenile diversion program, you could only have 1 prior misdemeanor adjudication. We changed that over to 2 priors for the sole reason to see if we can cast a little bit wider net, what impact would that have on the juveniles that are being referred for juvenile diversion. Prior to the change, 70% of black youth, 72% of Native American youth, and 84% of mixed race youth were deemed ineligible for whatever reason, just across the board. That's a lot of kids that have been arrested are ineligible for diversion. After we just changed that net widening of just by 1 prior misdemeanor adjudication from 1 to 2, we effected some change that now 61% were deemed ineligible of black youth, 67% of Native American youth, and 54% of mixed race youth. So you really look at, by doing that change, we gained about 9 percentage points more of black youth, and we got another 5% of Native American youth, and of mixed race youth, we actually picked up 30% more kids that are eligible. So when we start looking at this data on how we drive our decision making, this is a good illustration of why we're doing that, is by changing and tweaking just a little bit and experimenting with those tweaks. When we went from 1 to 2 misdemeanor adjudications, it was really yeah, let's try it and see what happens. And we did, and we saw some pretty good success rates with doing that we think without having a negative impact on crime, where crime is going up or we're not holding the kids accountable for their actions. So it really helped us. The other thing that we found out when we started keeping some statistics and looking at our data, and I'm really happy to see that there is no statistically significant racial disproportionality when comparing the percentage of youth arrested and the percentage of youth diverted across all racial and ethnic boundaries. So everybody is statistically the same, gets the same opportunity for diversion. Doesn't mean there's not more kids in the diversion program or that are being reviewed for diversion, kids of color or something, but what it does say is that we're pretty race neutral when it comes down to offering diversion to kids. So every kid that we see come in that Catherine reviews, every kid gets a pretty good offer, the same chance at going to diversion, no matter what their skin color or ethnic background is. So I think that's really good news for us. But we didn't know that until we started keeping the data on our diversion programming. We also use it, I talked a little bit about school-based offenses. Our SROs were always assigned a case, and we were kicking out every one of the cases out of the schools that our officers were making arrests for, our SROs were making arrests for. We were kicking them out of the eligibility for diversion. Well, that was really dumb when you start thinking about it. So we kicked that out, and we got more kids into diversion, and we also use our SROs as mentors to those kids when they do go to the diversion program. The other good partnership about that is our diversion providers can also use our SROs in attempting to contact kids and their families about eligibility for diversion, so that we're really trying to reach out to the families a little bit better. One thing about our enrollment numbers, and we struggle through it, and we have for years now, and we're still trying to find different ways to impact that number, is about 50% of the kids that are eligible for diversion don't go to diversion. for one reason or another, largely because we can't find them. We can't contact them, we don't get good phone numbers. Kids self-report to the arresting officers their address, their phone numbers, and a lot of our kids in the cities here are pretty mobile kids. They move around a lot, and if they self-report, we might get an address or a phone number that was from two years prior or something, and it's not current. So we do looking at how do we better connect our kids with our diversion providers to get them enrolled, because once they're enrolled, we have a great success rate, and I think Cynthia probably might touch on what that is, because they do a tremendous job for us there. One of the things that Chief Arredondo did with our, that really helps us out too, is when he took office as our Chief of Police, he created a juvenile division and made, probably not his best decision, he made me the commander of it, but by doing so, everything that touches juveniles comes to me. I'm responsible for it. So it really helps with the decision making. I own all those decisions, and they funnel up through me. So it really helps us when it comes time to our diversion program and stuff. The buck stops with me, and people know who to come to. Before we had the juvenile division commander, we had people calling all over trying to figure out how to navigate the system. Who do I even ask the question of? Right now it's me, and he really did. As he said, I want to put everything under one commander so that we're very focused on what we're doing with our Minneapolis youth. And the other thing he did is we put our school resource officers in the same functional unit as our diversion program, because we can be a resource to each other. We've got 14 SROs in the schools that are making contacts with kids and making relationships with kids every day. Well, why shouldn't we be using those as part of our diversion program of helping to find kids, helping talk to their families, and talk about the benefits of a kid that is eligible for diversion to go through the diversion program. So I think those are a couple things that Chief Arredondo has done that's really tried to focus that decision making. And finally, a couple of slides that this is really an attaboy for Cynthia and her folks. And why do I believe in our Minneapolis juvenile diversion program? First of all, it's pre-charge. Kids that successfully complete our diversion program don't get charged with a crime. They don't carry a criminal record that way. It stops with the arrest. Then it's done because they complete our diversion program. So I think that's a really good thing for these kids on setting them up for success in the future. But if you read some of these comments up here, you can see that these kids are affecting change in their own lives by going through this program. But it's not just the kids, the parents. Parents that have youth that are going through these programs, that are completing these programs, are finding resources for them to help them be better parents. I've got a 14-year-old son, and it still amazes me to this day. Before he was born, I went through all these childbirth classes with my wife. There's a doctor, there's nurses, everybody is there. When I left the hospital, they hand you a kid and say, "See ya, good luck to you." And I don't know, maybe it's a guy thing, or I look at my wife quite often and go, how do you know how to do this stuff? How do you know how to parent? I don't, but you look at what we're doing with some of our parents, we're helping our parents have better resources in how to raise their children. So I think this is a great community advantage for us to help our Minneapolis youth. Finally, it's great for our community. If a kid gets caught shoplifting and goes through the Restorative Justice Program, we're bringing the store owner in, we're bringing the community in to talk about the impact. It helps the community take ownership in what's going on in their community with their kids in their community. I refer to Minneapolis kids as our kids, my kids, because we have ownership in it. And I think this restorative justice model of diversion really helps our community have ownership into how we make our communities better. That's all I've got. If you have questions, I'll have my contact. My email's up here. Thank you.
Now, after you got to think of my office says Hennepin County, it's all of Hennepin County. So it's not just Minneapolis, but the bigger picture for us is Hennepin County. And as Bruce was saying, some of the kids who fail the program or didn't follow through, they come to our office. In our office, we enter the data for the kids, intake. Then for our diversion program, they go to the paralegals. The paralegals look for legal sufficiency of the cases. If the case can't be charged, we send it back and say, there's not enough evidence, the case can't be charged or anything like that. So we do that. If the case can be charged, then, as Bruce said, so we have diversion. He comes to us, or some of the other municipalities, Plymouth or Edina, they come to us. The paralegals look for the same information, can they be charged? Say those cases are those cases, lower level cases, as Bruce was saying, those misdemeanor, petty misdemeanors, we'll look for diversion. So even if the kids failed and followed through, they still have another chance to go to diversion. We have two organizations that we contract with. We have Headway and the Restorative Justice Collaborative. We contract with them. In the collaborative, there's 4 different restorative justice. You got CMR, I can't say that. Community mediation, the restorative justice, Cynthia's program. Help me out here.
Restorative Justice Community Action.
And you got CMRS.
Oh, that's the communication.
Okay, the
CMRS.
CMRS.
CRC.
Conflict Resolution Center. And then
CRC.
that's the one I just said. And then Sue Longfellow Restorative Justice
Right.
Partnership.
So we got
Yeah.
about 4. We had 5, but we lost 1.
Yeah.
So we have 4 that we contract with them through the legal rights. And then we have Headway. So with Headway, what we do, we send our diversion cases to Headway. What Headway does the Macy's, they also do the assessment, and they have the families called and invited them to come. Headway, all of our stuff is volunteer. It's okay. It's
I was thinking a department store.
Oh, yeah, right. No, it's a test that they do to see what behavior is going on with the kid. What is it that they need before they recommend the placement for the kid? It's a psychological, but not a big psychological. That's how I look at it. It's one of those small. Macy's just give you an indication of the kid's behavior. That's what it does. And not all kids go through that because the parents are with the kids at that interview with Headway. So the parents can be talking about, school. They can be talking about maybe some mental health issues. They can be talking about his behavior her behavior, their behavior outside, CD issues, what have you. So they go through Headway, and Headway is listening to what they're saying, getting input for the young person. The young person's there too. So Headway is looking at this collaborative, not a punitiveness, but what can we do for the family? What is it that they need? So I use this for an example. So Headway say, okay, you need a CD. So we have Empowerment is a program that works with psychological, and we have a CD program. So okay, we'll have him go here.
Does everyone know what a CD program is?
Chemical dependence. I know, true. Chemical dependence program. How's that CD? It's chemical dependence program. And so the film said he needs that, so we can refer the kids, Headway can refer the kids there. Or if it's restorative justice, they can refer them to the collaborative. Or they can go to the collaborative and the CD program. So Headway's saying, okay, we're gonna send you to the CD program, we're gonna send you to Cynthia's program, RJCA, we can send you there at the same time. But if there's other issues, like mental health issues, Headway can say, okay, there's some parents are saying there's some mental health things going on, we can have you go to one of the therapists at Headway. All the programs up front doesn't cost the parents anything. They don't have to pay for any stuff. If it's a psychological long therapy, the Headway can look at their insurance and say this is needed and talk to the family about that. We found out about 85% of the families there, they have some kind of medical insurance. And the families who get involved with therapy, what we're finding, they are sticking with that program for their kids to go to therapy. So that's one of the things that we're pleased with. And one of the things that Headway does for us also, they collect restitution. The victims there. Cynthia, as she'll talk more about that, the restorative justice, they give a victim's impact statement. Cynthia knows there's their victim. You know Cynthia, because she's here. She knows there's a victim there. Contact the victim, see if they want to be part of the mediation process. Again, all this is volunteer. But Cynthia knows when we send a report over there, we send a report, police report, she knows what's going on about the case. One of the things that we found out that we did different with the restorative justice folks, when we had them before, with the exception of the RJCA program, they did an intake thing with the family and an exit interview to see how the family was doing. The other 3 didn't do that. They did it over the phone. You need to have a meeting with the with the mediation people that are there, talk about the behavior. What we asked this year is that all the collaborative folks do the intake, but have a face-to-face meeting with their family before they start the mediation process. Because you can hear what the family needs. If they feel that that's not the appropriate place, they can send it back to us and we can send it back to Headway. So we've learned something over the years and talk with families and that it's really important that you have the initial face-to-face contact with family. That's really crucial of any organization. You need that face-to-face contact. You need to hear what the parents have to say, you know. And so Cynthia can have that for mediation, but she can also say, hey, you know, we need to have you go to Headway and you can do your mediation, we go to Headway because there's other needs at the family or you need something else that Headway does. So when we contract for Headway, we do the whole package thing, and when we do it the collaborative, Headway can use the collaborative also because we're paying for them to use that. They can do that too. Then we have the kids, you know, then they have the kids there, go through the program successfully, end of story, because those reports only stay within the county attorney's office. It doesn't go to the Bureau of Criminal Apprehensive. It doesn't go there. It just stays within our office. Those cases are closed and successful. So you have that. The kid's done good, successful, end of story. Then you have the other kids that failed. They failed the program. They failed Cynthia's program. They failed the second bite of the apple. They just don't want to do it and for whatever reason. Then they come to court for the petty calendar. That's the least serious calendar. They have a third bite of the apple. So they've, you know, gone to Headway, gone to Cynthia, gone everywhere, but we do not want to charge a kid. He or she comes to court, you know, they failed. I talked to them, I interviewed the family. For some reason, that third time, they want to go to Restorative Justice. Don't ask me why I cannot figure that one out. Because they've gone every place else, but they come to court and say, okay. But then at that point, in my interviewing and talking to families, I can refer them back to an RJC program or the collaborative program. I can also refer the kids to Headway. Because again, the parents is talking about the mental health issues, things are going on that they don't understand and what have you. So we can refer the kids back to Headway. Because what happens in the petty calendar, they have the least serious services. They have brief intervention with a CD program that we can use. They have a one-day anger management thing that we can use. And they collect restitution for us. They work with our office collecting restitution at that petty calendar. They can do that also. But what we found in talking to the family, there's that mental health piece, and you probably are aware of that, the needs that are out there. So we can send that back to Headway to do the assessment, you know, do a psychological, get the kid in therapy. Any kid that we send from court back to Headway, they can't go through the restorative justice process. Because the parents are telling us, giving us information at the intake, and we're sort of like trying to work with the parents, see what they need. Okay, there's some mental health stuff going on. We'll send them back to Headway. What we found when those kids go back to Headway, I would say less than 1% come back to us. They've completed the program because that's what the family needed. And at that time, I'm asking the family, what is it that we can, even though it's limited resources, what is it that we can give you? How can we help you? What do you need? And that's an important piece. Because along the way, even all through our process, everyone is asking the family, what do you need? And sometime by that fourth time visit, you know, coming to the court, then it's like, okay, I know what I need now. Even though they fell, they're beginning to put it together and they know what they need. Johnny's still acting out, he's still doing this stuff, but you know what? Something's not connecting. They don't always know the words of mental health, they don't always know that, but they know that he needs something else other than what he was getting before. And that's a good thing. So he comes to court, again, he's not charged. CWAP is to continue without a plea. That means if he successfully completes the case, at the Headway, case closed, end of story. And he's not charged with anything. So along that process, from the beginning, going to Headway initially, you know, he goes to Headway, he's successful, goes to Headway, doesn't follow through, come back, he or she still gets another chance at diversion. Because our goal is to really try to keep the kids out of the system as much as possible, not have them have a record. Because we know once you get a record, it's out there. You know, and the kids don't get that. They think it's, oh, you know, I'm a kid. But sometimes, I always remind the kids, you hear what people say in the news? He was in juvenile court, he was in this, that, everything. So it's like really relating to the kids and talking to the parents, figuring out what it is that they want and letting the parents. The interesting thing, sometimes it's the parents. The kids want to go through the program, but parents say, nope, he needs to come to court, he needs to do this. In court, he's not going to get the help. At that level, at the petty calendar, he's not going to get the help. So it's really I find myself convincing the parents, you don't want your daughter to have a record. You don't want this over and over again. You know, so that petty calendar again, hopefully convince the parents, no, you want this and not that. You don't want him to have a record. You want him to complete whatever he needs to complete. So that's the juvenile diversion program in the county attorney's office. We have a few more resources than the restorative justice folks. The Headway has, rather, I should say, they have more resources that they can get. We have a gender-specific program. That's the Girls RAT program at the YWCA. So we refer the girls there because there's only girls there, and that's a good program. We have Boulder Option. That's a mentoring program that we can refer. The Headway can use that program. We have Empowerment of Black Psychological Services. Kid can go there. Because sometimes, believe it or not, I'm just saying this, sometimes the parents want to go to places, people that look like them, and they'll tell you that. And they'll ask you that question. Is this a black person doing, is this a Native American? They will ask you the question. Before they didn't, but now they're tuned into that. We don't have a lot of service minority that we can refer, but we have a few. But they will ask the question. There's not been a time when parents have asked the question, can he or she, is there a black person there? Is there a Native American person there? They ask that question because they feel comfortable asking the question, as they should. Because they want the best for their kids, and I try to explain them, everyone's sort of sensitive to your kid and so forth, and convince them, because that's maybe all that we have. So I find, I've been doing this for about 33 years. I've done a lot of different things. And parents are becoming much more aware of what's out there, you know, and they want to know. And they want to be back in their community. That's the other thing. What's in my community? Because I don't have a bus, I don't have a car, I don't have this, that, and everything. You know, is this in my community? Can they come to me? And those are some of the things that we're all trying to be conscious to. Like Cynthia goes to McDonald's, or, you know, go to the library, go to the community, wherever's near them that's in the community, to get them to open up. You know, so it's like I can say it for all the programs, we try to address the people in their neighborhood and try to really let them make choices. And it's like asking, I'm one that's important when you're working, you know this, when you work with family, what is it that you need rather than me telling you what you need? You have to ask families, in my opinion, what is it that you need? What is it that you want? How can we help you? Yes, we can do this. No, we don't have that. But I think that's so important for me, and the clients and people that I see, ask the question, what do you need? You need this? Nope, don't tell them, but ask them, because they'll tell you. I can't provide that, I can't do this. But at least they're asking you the question, oh, I can do this. And that's so important in my business, since I've been around doing this for 40-something years now, 45 years now. But it's just learning. Ask the clients, and you all know that what is it that you want?
Hey, Billy, can I ask you?
Sure.
Does the Macy screen for like sexual assault or?
Oh, good point. There's a separate program. Let's bump it up. We have a boundary. We get kids in our office sometimes, and it's not a sexual thing or whatever. It's kids being silly, and the attorneys get those cases, and they can refer the cases to diversion. We use Headway. Headway has a boundary program for inappropriate touch. So they have that. The Macy, as I understand it, you know, little one, it's an indication of a behavior. If they saw there's something there in talking with the family, yes, they can refer them to that program. But Headway has a boundary program that deals with the sexual thing, and if they don't think that's inappropriate, they'll send it back and say, wait a minute, there's more to it than this.
I was just curious about that in terms of underlying reason for aggressive behavior and acting out.
Oh, they've seen some of that, yeah.
Yeah, and I won't deviate too much, but I was just curious about that, because I had the opportunity, and I don't know why I strike up conversations, but sometimes I strike up conversations with kids. And this was somebody that was coming from had participated in one of those anger management kind of classes. They were mandated to do that. Thought it was a waste of time, and I was talking to this kid, and in conversation, my assessment was the issue really were around sexual assault, and that's what, and
From a victim or a
as a victim, yeah, and so that's why I was curious if that's even something that's considered when you do assessments for.
When the Headway looks, they try to look at everything really, because they're case managers and therapists there. And with like the boundary program, like the other part, the attorneys are talking with getting the case into the office. These are the attorneys, not through the paralegals, and they see that it's an appropriate boundary, it's not a sexual thing, because if you go that route, you're found guilty, it's on your record.
Yeah.
So the boundary programs talk about appropriate boundaries, and we get kids who are 11, 12 years old who don't know their boundaries, so they get referred to Headway in their boundary programs and talk about inappropriate touch, boundary, and different like that. But they have had some of the cases there. The more parents talk, the more they reveal.
Yeah.
And Headway picks up on that and says, hey, this is the appropriate program. Because it's like, one of the things that Headway doesn't do, which I like, You may have gotten there for shoplifting, theft, or what have you, but what causes the behavior that you got there in the first place? So they really look at that. We just got something yesterday from a mom sent a long 8-page letter to me yesterday. Her daughter's going to different programs. I won't say the program, but she was saying that this, she mentioned Headway. She said, you know, they asked the right question, they did this. I appreciate they got him to the appropriate program. And she was complaining about a program that we had nothing to do with. Yes.
One thing you mentioned, right at the beginning was that you were talking about if a case gets to you and you realize that it's not like chargeable, then it will get sent back. How has it gotten that far already if it's not chargeable?
And, you know, you got the officer on the street writing report. There may be something there that they didn't see that we caught that's not chargeable. And if we want more information, we send it back to the police department and say, you know, can you get more information on this case at this time? This is not chargeable. And the paralegal, when they look at, they'll send it back to the officer and say what's missing, the reason why it's not chargeable. There's not enough evidence, there's not enough information here, whatever.
There's two concepts. One is probable cause for the arrest, and legal sufficiency for charging are two different standards.
Yeah. So we'll send it back, because we want to have, when we divert our kids, we want to say, okay, that case is chargeable. So, and it's fair to the family, because if it's not, you know, why go through a process that you really can't do anything with? And when the kids go through diversion, even when I interview them and when they go to one of the collaborative, they have to admit that they've done something wrong. One thing about Headway and the collaborative, regardless of what they tell them, they can't tell us, because we're sending the case to those providers that what we have is chargeable. They can say anything they want to do, and that's the whole concept of having diversion and restorative justice. You can talk about your behavior, talk about anything. We don't care, and they don't share that information. And they make that real clear with people up front, because that's what diversion is all about. Because if we cannot charge the case, we shouldn't be sending them to them in the first place. And that makes families a lot, you know, even when the CWAP and the kids, what do you mean, I'm going to court? What do you mean, continue with our plea? Well, we don't care as long as you take some responsibility and we're going to divert the case again. And they will ask you that question. I mean, I get in trouble, you know, so it's interesting. Kids are pretty smart. And it's really working with the family, you know, working with the parents, because the parents, they think court is the end-all be-all, and it's not. That you're gonna do this, you're gonna send them here, you're gonna send them where it's not gonna happen for those kind of charges. And we don't want to send kids out of their homes. We don't want to do that. That's not what we want. We don't want them to have records. And sometimes I spend half my time convincing the parents, you don't want this. You know, you really don't want this. This is not, he's not gonna be locked up. We're not sending him out of home. This is not gonna happen. But we have a better alternative that we can address the behavior this way. And if he doesn't complete, then he can come back to court. But anyway, that's my thing.
All right. So, again, I'm Cynthia Brosek with Restorative Justice Community Action. We're one of the partner organizations that provides restorative processes for diversion, both at the MPD level and the Hennepin County level. So our process is really based in that real conversation about what occurred, what happened, what kind of led up to that, who was affected, how people feel about the impact it has, and then finding a way to make amends that everybody agrees on. It empowers the youth to not only tell and share their story, take responsibility for their actions, whether it's 100, you know, nothing's exactly, this is 100% good, this is 100% bad, you're either one or the other. No, it's always a mixture, because we live life and it's gray out there. So even if there's more than one youth in an incident, we talk about their own personal responsibility for what they did and take ownership of that. And then how that action affects not only themselves, but their family, and then the ever larger community. If a victim wants to participate, they can, a lot of times, we invite them. If they want to participate, they can participate either in written, or they can actually be there and be part of the conference to talk about how they're affected also. But that main part of that conversation is really about, so what happened and how's everybody affected? And then from there, that's really an area where together we talk about root causes. We really, like, what led up to it, what are the root causes, what are the other underlying things that may not be working so well, not just how do we fix this one specific problem, but what's gonna make that youth thrive and move forward rather than be stuck in the past and wear this label of doing something wrong. So the youth provides what they want to do, the parent, the community members, the victim, they all come together and they decide, so what is it that you're going to do to help turn things around and then to move forward. And so in that creation of that agreement, there are things that are addressed to address the harms that are caused, but also, like I said, moving forward includes volunteering, whether that's for an organization, for family, for friends, for neighbors. Maybe there's apologies, written or verbal. And then there's a lot of opportunity for personal development within those agreements, whether it's around schools, is it creating a plan, is it setting goals for doing better in school, is it about what is my plan for after I graduate, what are the gifts and skills I'm identifying as that I can use that nobody else has. Am I really good at writing? Am I good at poetry? Am I good at art? Coaching, sports. So there's ways of tapping in to the positive things that you do to make amends. So it's not just about let's fix what was wrong. Let's talk about what is it that moves you from that moves you into a full, I would like to say, the full participant in the community. So how do you bring your best, not only now, but in the future? So that's what the process really revolves around. We get our referrals, like I said, from both agencies, and then I, for the Minneapolis Police Department, decide which organization feels like it's the one that would best support that family through this process, whether it's because it's geographically located, because they have culturally specific members of their volunteer or their staff. So which is the best agency that will help that youth? And so then from there, they get it and they do their process, or we get it and we do our process. And it follows through, and then we report back to the agencies. What I think is wonderful about the fact is the collaborative, and also that there's this, we always, I know when we were talking about Blueprint a long time ago, it's like, how do we have that continuous sense of care? So a kid doesn't just start over every time. This is one of these great partnerships where kids don't always, we can kind of tag team, which is great because then people aren't starting from scratch. There's some sense of the fourth time they get that opportunity. We've all said the same thing, or we've passed on what's occurred up until that point, so that we know that this approach didn't work this time, so what approach is going to possibly work next time. Just recently, we've had a couple of cases where there was one case that was actually being dealt with in the public school systems that was referred to our agency, but the LRC was working with this youth in the school system, and they found out that the school part of it versus the MPD part were on the same situation. So how do we bring? So now we've moved that over to Legal Rights Center because they were already working and established that relationship. There's no reason they have to do two programs just to satisfy that. Also, one youth had attempted to, or didn't succeed in our program because they didn't complete it, and now has gone to another organization. But we were able to say, so this is how far they got. This is what was said. This is a participation, so that they have an opportunity to have some of that wealth of knowledge. So again, they don't have to repeat it, and so the kid feels like, oh, this again. It's more about knowing that they are being surrounded through care all the way through, and tapping into all the resources and agencies around are really important. So I'm glad to know about that boundary thing at Headway, because I didn't know that. So there are things that we all know. We try to advise them if this is someplace that you might want to check into for restorative justice. We don't say this is what you have to do, but we offer many resources even outside of that meeting with the community members and the victims. when we first meet with them and do that intake, we say, these are some resources you may want to look at. And then for the MPV cases, we always invite them to be part of the Tubman Inspiring Youth program. And that's been really great because they have mentorships and it's voluntary, and it's been really wonderful to see a lot of amputee youth pick that up and utilize that. So.
One of the things I want to throw in here that we all do, when the kid is referred to all of us, we send a letter out to a parent to let them know what this is about, that it's not cold turkey. You know, that your kid's been referred to Minneapolis, or your kid's from the county attorney's office is being referred to Headway for diversion. And we have a person in our office who call actually to explain to us what diversion is. And that's in really trying to communicate ahead of time rather than after the fact. This is what's going on, this is what you can expect. So we try to really create that that type of communication. One of the other things that we're trying to work on too, kids move around so much. We know the zip codes and how to get to those kids. So we try to work together, as Bruce was saying earlier, that all of our programs, like, how do we reach those kids that we can't reach? So if you got any suggestions, let us know.
Exactly.
Anyway.
Hi again, my name is Lena Brazil. Again, I'm a juvenile probation officer for Hennepin County. So a little aside from the diversion program, I actually deal with clients as well as a lot of my colleagues of clients who actually do not probably get a chance to do the diversion program and get put on some type of supervision. So there's a couple handouts. One of them is the colorful sheet. It kind of walks you through a process once a client may have committed an offense, gets arrested, and kind of goes through this process from a referral or contact with the police all the way through a disposition, meaning something that takes place at an actual court hearing. So for example, I'm a probation officer that supervises clients all the way from misdemeanor level offenses all the way up to felony. So for an example, a misdemeanor offense might be kind of like Bruce talked about earlier, maybe a typical fight a kid might have in a school. Usually those get charged out as assault 5s. They may get amended down to a disorderly conduct, but that would be an example of what a misdemeanor offense would look like. Gross misdemeanor could be more at a level of some type of theft. Let's say someone stole something worth of products, maybe over $250, a pair of jeans, a camera, something of that nature, would make sure that it probably be charged out as some type of a gross misdemeanor. And then for felony level offenses, some examples could include auto thefts, robberies, carrying guns, burglaries, etc. So I supervise pretty much clients from all those ranges. And what happens is when a client gets arrested by law enforcement, they're brought to the juvenile detention center and then they go through a process. They have a first court appearance, which is usually known as a detention hearing, and that determines at that time what happens to this client until they go through the court process. So one, that could generally mean a client is released to their parent or guardian until the next court hearing. 2, they can go home on electronic home monitoring, which is the house arrest bracelet, or they may stay in custody in JDC until that next hearing. And through all that, they have different types of hearings to determine what's gonna happen with this client and if they're gonna ultimately get put on probation. So when they are put on probation, the judge has ordered these clients pretty much conditions that they expect them to complete by a certain amount of time. Some conditions, depending on the situation of the client, could be some type of family therapy, individual therapy, STS, acronym known for Sentence to Service, when you see clients that are out picking up trash or doing things in the community to kind of service the community and help things of what may be needed to be done. Some clients have to do random UA tests or urinalysis tests. Some are ordered to write letters of apologies to victims. Sometimes if there's a monetary value of loss of an offense, like for instance, if someone steals a car and crashes it, that victim is probably gonna want their insurance deductible back so they can get their car repaired, and then they're court ordered to pay restitution. So there's a bunch of different conditions that a client could be required to do, and then us as probation officers monitor them in the community to make sure they get those services done. A lot of kids are expected to attend school, so a lot of POs will check in on kids' attendance, things of that nature, making sure they're attending school as need be. We also kind of have different probation officers throughout our division. So for instance, I supervise caseload of kids who have committed offense, went to court, and they're now ordered probation. We have other probation officers who write maybe PSIs or pre-sentence investigations, who get maybe a more thorough report on a client or a family to inquire what's going on with them, to see what type of services they may need. We have some clients who never formally get put on full probation because they may come into court for like a status or a petty offense, like a curfew. They may have had like a petty theft, which could be stealing a candy bar or something from a store. They may just be required to do a day of STS and write a letter of apology. That is not enough to put a client on actual supervised probation. So once they complete those conditions, then they're dismissed. We also have probation officers that just monitor just the restitution and the monetary value that is owed to a victim. So they're not on like no restrictive type caseload. They just need to collaborate with that person to make sure they're getting that money value back for the victim. We also have a more intense probation officer, which is known as the EJJ POs. Those POs supervise clients that have a little bit more of the intense offenses. And those clients are on probation until they're 21, kind of with prison time hanging over their head, because the offense they committed, some could be attempted murder, some could be murder, some could be just different high-level offenses. And the crime that they committed is so severe, they feel that if they were an adult, they'd be charged out in adult court. But it's the way of the system to try to give these clients another opportunity to make changes and make things happen before it gets to that level. So they're supervised until they're 21, basically with prison time hanging over their head. So if they get revoked by their PO or by the courts, then they have to go do that time. We also, how a client would get assigned to a PO, we are broken out in different divisions. So usually it goes, after it goes through the court process, it'll get assigned to a supervisor that works in a particular division, and then it's kind of based upon demographics, if you will. So for instance, my clientele that I supervise, I have clients that primarily live in Northeast Minneapolis and North Minneapolis. If a client has an address living in like Bloomington, Richfield, Southeast, or South Minneapolis, they're gonna get assigned to one of our Southside POs. And in this packet, it kind of shows different regional areas. And so our Southside office is located in South Minneapolis off of, I believe it's 12th and Lake Street. Kind of kitty corner from that Global Market building over there. We also have a suburban unit, which is right in Brooklyn Center, located off of like 694 and Brooklyn Boulevard, I believe. So those clients will get supervised by one of the suburban POs if they live in like Crystal, New Hope, Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center, Maple Grove, Rogers, etc. And then our office, located in North Minneapolis, is on 36th and Fremont. And those clients primarily will be assigned to PO if they live in North Minneapolis. Soon, that office in the suburbs, as well as on 36th and Fremont, is gonna be actually moving over to this building right here, across the street, across the parking lot. So generally, what has happened over the time or over the course of the years, everyone used to be located downtown Minneapolis. And what they want to do is try to service the families and the kids to make sure we had locations that were in the neighborhood. So everyone's not having to come downtown and pay lots of money to come see us. You know, it's easy for a client to come. I have clients that live literally right around the corner from my office, or 2 blocks or something like that. And it's a lot more convenient for us to either go see them come see us, drive them to appointments if need be, just something basically, to help them be successful. So that's something that's changed over the years, and now, like I said, a couple of our agencies or probation offices will be moving into that new building. What else can I say about probation? I know Carol also is gonna talk about a lot of the resources that we have within probation. Again, as Willie was talking about some of the programs that they have in diversion, we also have programs within probation to try to help kids with a lot of different factors, whether that's a CD issue. Again, they may need some anger management, they may need individual or family therapy. We may want to connect them with one of our community specialists through the YMCA program. that we go through Griselda over here in a green jacket, like myself. We give her a lot of the referrals, and she helps link us up with our clients to get a community specialist that will take them out in the community to look for jobs, get a YMCA membership, participate in any other field trips or activities that they may have. Again, ultimately, one of the goals is to have juveniles be busy. We know that juveniles who don't have much to do, aren't involved in activities, don't have the support services, 9 times out of 10 might get involved in some negative behaviors. So we do have a lot of resources that we try to see what's gonna help be a great fit for clients in order to make them be successful on probation. Carol and I also facilitate an orientation for like a lot of volunteers and interns that come and help us and work with us. They also come participate, some of the community specialists. So there's like a whole lot of information we can cover. Feel free to ask questions, but usually sometimes when we do these, they take about 4 hours. So I try to consolidate that into a little bit of information, but again, feel free to ask any questions that you may have about these packets. And I know Carol's gonna talk a little bit about our community-based array of services that we have as well.
Can I interject? I always want to interject something, because I want to make sure everybody's in your head a flow chart. Everything starts over here.
Yep.
So I want to make, it starts with the police department. They do their diversion, never see the county attorney. Then it comes to the county attorney's office. County attorney's office gets all juvenile matters that come through our office. The county attorneys decide to charge the cases that Lena's talking about, decide to charge those cases. Some of those cases maybe have a public defender. The petty cases don't have you can go out and hire an attorney that can provide one. So you got the police department, county attorney deciding whatever. Some kids need a public defender. You got a trial, the things that Lena's done. Kids found guilty, they go there. But the county attorney definitely makes what it is they're gonna charge. And then it goes to Lena, probation, and then Carol. But I want to make sure everybody's following that.
And if you do look at the flow chart, I think it's a nice way visually to be able to see it, because I know it's really confusing when
Yeah.
we try to talk about it. So, it's a good way to kind of pull it all together. I am Carol Wandersee, and I'm the Community-Based Array of Services Coordinator in Juvenile Probation. First and foremost, what I want to say is that we cheer the police departments and we cheer the county attorney's office for all of those successful diversions, because those are kids that we never see in our probation system. So, and that's really what our goal is. We want to make sure that youth and families receive services front end, so really they're not relying on our probation department to be able to receive the services after coming into our system. So we really applaud and rely on our partners for helping with that aspect of getting services front end. What I would say is about 13 years ago, the Juvenile Probation, Juvenile Services Department in Hennepin County took on this journey working with Annie E. Casey and the Juvenile Detention Alternatives Initiative, or JDAI. From that journey, what we really wanted to do is take a look at the number of youth that we had in detention on a daily basis, and did those youth really need to be in detention? Were there alternatives for them to be pending court, pending process, without being held? From that, we also wanted to look at our disparities. We had disparities of youth of color in our detention center. We had disparities in our gender as well. So we really took that project on, and as part of that reform, what we wanted to make sure that we were doing is providing community-based options for our youth that were on probation, so that we had better results. From that, we started our journey on the community-based array of services and developing programs that our probation officers could partner with contracts, so that they did a couple of things. One was that they were breaking barriers that families had to getting to services. Whenever possible, we bring services to the family so that they don't have to go to different locations. The other barrier we wanted to break was fiscal responsibility. We wanted to make sure that we weren't putting a family in fiscal harm by asking them or ordering them to do a project, a program, or a community-based option. And as Willie stated before, we really wanted to make sure that these programs were rooted in the community where the families live, so that they don't have to be reliant on the system to be able to help them provide for those services. They know where those services are right there in their communities.
I'm not gonna go through every contracted program that we have. I'm just gonna go through some of our general categories, and Lena did a nice job of talking about some of the resources that we partner with. What we know is that, Willie also alluded to this, that a lot of our families move, and so sometimes they don't know when it's time to come to court. And when you don't show up for court, what happens is we give you a couple other opportunities, and then the court will issue a warrant for your arrest. When you are found, you then have a potential of going to the detention center. Once a youth starts in the detention center, their likelihood of going to an out-of-home placement increases drastically. So we don't want that to happen. We also know that part of that barrier is from moving around. They don't know about court. Maybe families have a fear of coming to court. So we have one opportunity through community coaches to be able to help support families in breaking those barriers to making sure that they're showing up for their court appearances and they're getting through that court process. We also know that absenting from home is a very dangerous situation. We know that when youth are out on the street, the risk of being sexually assaulted, physically assaulted, self-harming behavior, chemical use increases dramatically. So we do have an opportunity and option that we partner with one of our community resources that looks at absenting, running away from home as a public health crisis. And so we pair those youth that are running away from home with an advanced practice nurse. That way their mental health, their medical, and their connection back to home and school is solid. And that's really what we want to try to have happen. But we can roll that up into all of one service to be able to provide that. Willie also alluded to the fact that we have brief intervention, which is a chemical health intervention program for low and moderate level youth that have substance abuse concerns. We also have the opportunity in probation that we do have a chemical health probation officer in unit so that we're able to do chemical health evaluations. We have support and resources for the probation officers for inpatient and outpatient chemical health needs. We also know that youth support and youth mentoring is really, really important. Having a caring adult in the life of a youth is key. So we do offer some mentoring programs that really focus on education, employment, and pro-social activities. We also know that not every kid makes it in a traditional school setting. It doesn't work for everybody. So our probation officers also have the opportunity to look at alternative school settings. They may be a charter school, maybe a smaller school setting, maybe something that meets the youth's IEP or individualized education plan better, but they do have different options, GED programs. We have a planning analyst that specializes in education and employment. We have an educational leadership team made up of our probation officers to really enhance and support educational needs of youth that are on probation. Willie also alluded to the fact that our youth have mental health needs. And in the course of, I would say, the last 7 to 8 years, this has been a system change that we've really had to focus on. Probation officers have really had to focus on. And so we have had to reach out, and we really need to use our community supports to be able to meet the mental health needs of our youth. We have mobile assessors that are able to go to a youth to do psychological evaluations. We have mental health case managers. We use the front door services through the Human Services and Public Health Department a lot to be able to connect mental health resources to our youth. We use the mobile mental health crisis 24/7 number a lot. So when families are in crisis, especially in evenings and on weekends, that they have the support that they need. We also have an opportunity to use Children's Therapeutic Support Services so that we can do individual counseling, family counseling, skills work in home so that we're breaking that barrier as well. We also utilize North Point, Hennepin County Medical Center, and the Hennepin County Mental Health Center to make sure that our families are connected to the resources that they need. About 5 or 6 years ago, we kind of scratched our head and said, gosh, you know what, our girls really aren't doing so great in some of these boys programs that we've developed. Maybe we better rethink this, right? Right. So we were really fortunate, and we got the opportunity to start creating some gender responsive, some gender specific programs for girls. So we have mostly group settings, but we have the opportunity for girls, especially around sexual trauma, sexually exploited youth, to do equine therapy. We have some psychoeducational groups too around trauma and healthy relationships. And then we also have groups around empowerment, because the more we can empower, the better outcomes again we have. So we are seeing much better results with our young girls, our girls that come onto probation. And it's been a really exciting transformation. We also have gender-specific probation officers, so they have only girls on their caseloads. So they really have a different dynamic, different relationship, and know all of our community resources very well. Now, what I want you to do is close your eyes for a second and imagine that you're having a really bad day, like a really bad day. And your boss is now yelling at you and just gave you 10 things that you have to do. Okay? How do you guys feel? Angry?
Overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed? Good. Anything else? Now what I want you to do is imagine that you're a 13 or 14 or 15 or 16-year-old young person that has come to court by themselves. And they're sitting in front of a judge, and a judge has just given them 10 things to do so that they can be successful to get off probation. How do you think that young person feels? Unsupported? Very good. Scared? Confused? Angry? Stress? Absolutely, all of those things. And first, it's always amazing to me that a 13, 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old young person has managed to get to court by themselves. I mean, that's the first step in showing some incredible responsibility. And that happens on a daily basis in our juvenile court system. So again, one of the things that we really wanted to focus on, and this was a huge philosophical change for us in juvenile probation, is that we have a youth that stands in front of the judge, sits in front of a judge, and the youth orders that, or the judge orders that youth to do something. What we also know is that without those caring adults and without a family support system, whatever that looks like, a youth really struggles to make it through. So we are now able to offer family-based programming. We are able to offer in-home therapy. We are able to offer wraparound services, all of which are evidence-based. So nationally and internationally, there are programs that have been researched that says this is what works with some of our families that are involved in the juvenile justice system. The nice thing about these programs is that we also share them with the Human Services and Public Health Department. And as we talked about before, the earlier we can intervene, the better. So if we've got some youth and family that are struggling and we realize that front end, again, we're hoping that we're not going to see them in probation where we have to utilize these resources. But it's really a nice option for families because it's in-home. There's no cost to the families, and they're there really to support the whole unit to make some changes. Because it impacts the whole family, what we also hope is that there may be younger or older youth that we never see in our juvenile system because it's making some systemic changes within a family unit. Lena talked a little bit too about the fact that we want to make sure that our youth are busy, especially between the hours of 4 to 8 and on Saturdays and weekends. So we have evening reporting centers that help support youth with pro-social activities, tons and tons of learning opportunities as well. We also have an outpatient sexual health treatment program which focuses on boundaries, primary treatment, and also aftercare. And I think the most important and the most exciting thing is that we do realize that we have gaps in here. We realize that we can't provide every service, and so we rely on our community partners all the time to help support our youth and our families. But in 2018, we'll really be focusing on trauma services for boys, especially in the North Minneapolis area. So right now we're in development of some new programming and hopefully making a difference to address some of the trauma needs that we know that our youth face every day. That's what I have to say. Go ahead.
Are all of your programs gendered now? After you said you made the girls group, okay. Do you have any services specifically for trans and gender non-conforming youth?
That is a great question, and this gets to be very tricky sometimes. We know that this is a gap area. We know that this is a definite gap area. So we can help support youth in our runaway intervention program. We can help support sometimes, depending upon the gender I don't know how to really say that, the gender identification. Sometimes we can put, I mean, biologically male boys into some of our female programs by using our one-to-one case management or using individual sessions.
I'm not prompting you, I just wanna be responsive.
Absolutely.
You keep talking as long as you need to continue.
So we absolutely know it's a gap area that we need to work more intentionally upon. Thank you.
So I wanted to come to the front because it seems like we're at the end of our presenters' individual presentation, so I wanted to open the floor up for questions from the audience. Oh, come on, you guys have questions. I see one there, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I had a question. So, you talked about the screening criteria you have, that you can't have more than 2 misdemeanors if you want to go through the program. Are there ever youth, I guess if this is more like the top 3 people at the table, are there ever youth who go through the whole restorative justice program more than once, or is it sort of like a one-time shot for all of that whole chain?
They can go through the program. It depends. You know, when we get cases in the office, for example, we keep our data on our stuff, and we can refer the kids out again in our program if it's a year, or if they've committed a crime. Let me back up. What happens is, we get a case in the office, okay, Johnny committed a crime yesterday. Okay, so we refer them out to Headway for us. Okay, and then stuff slowly comes in our office. Oh, Johnny committed a crime this day, after this one. So we get that in there, but we can put those cases together. What I do is call the agency, where is he at in the program? Can we send this other case? We're gonna send this other case over to him. So we can, we can and we do.
Is that used ever as like I know it wasn't one of your official screening criteria, but like if you see someone's already gone through the restorative justice program, is that ever sort of a decision-making point? For
If they successfully complete it, we'll let them go again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the hardest thing with that is like, when we get in the office, so we see, say maybe they have committed a crime in Minneapolis, and say they were out in Plymouth. And we have this, what is that screen called? What's the one that we have that we can look at and see he's in someplace else? I can't think of the screen that you have access to.
J-Dog?
J-Dog.
J-Dog.
So we
That's
look
your
at-
system.
Huh? I don't know.
That's your system.
We have so many
See, they're
systems.
so fully
That's-
integrated,
that's
they
the-
don't know whose system is
That's
which.
your
That's our
system.
system. Okay, so we have J-Dog that we can go look into and see that, oh, he's been there, he's been here, what have you, and take that into consideration. Would we divert him again? So that's the thing, but yeah, if he's, I've called Cynthia many times and say, where's this kid at in your program? Can we send him to you? And 95% of times, yeah, so he's still in the program.
And we've had.
Oh, go ahead, Cynthia.
And we've actually, I've actually had a case where there was this group of boys from the western suburbs that did something when they were 13, and then most of the, did something again, like 2 years later. So, Willie sent it back to us, and it was great, because we got the community members who were in that original one to say, what did you learn from that first time? I know. So there's a way to, to strengthen the community response also. It's like we try to pull people back so that they know that that people care about them, even, if they've made another mistake, you told us this last time, so what are you gonna do differently this time? And, so it was really great.
I saw your hand up there.
Do you have any stats on repeat offenses of teens that chose to do the program versus those who opted out?
Like recidivism rates?
Yeah.
For both, no, I don't.
We're starting to keep that in our
Yeah.
office, looking at the recidivism rate and see what the kids go through. So the county attorney's office, we're going back and looking at what is the recidivism rate as kids stay. He's staying out of it, or is he coming back again?
Right.
Or even we can look at and say, has he committed a more serious crime?
Okay, yeah.
So, but we're starting to gather that information. Someone's in our office like doing research on that and looking at that information.
Got a question over here?
Yeah, I have 2 questions also. You probably said this and I missed it, but what is the age range for youth that are eligible for the diversion program?
10 years old, 10 to 17.
10 to 17.
What we did in the office this year, though, we're trying something different. You got a kid who's, say, 17 and a half. We put him on a short leash. We try to get him through the diversion program. Because he's 17 and a half, and that's it. And what we look at, that's the only charge that he has. He has 1 misdemeanor, a petty misdemeanor. Then we will try to get him through the program. but he has a shorter lease. The rest kids have 6 months. He may only have 3 months to get this taken care of. And the agencies that we refer them to, they know that he's on a short leash and he needs to get this taken care of. And that's what restitution too. Because we have, someone mentioned earlier, restitution, if a kid has $1,000 or less, he can go to diversion or if it's a petty misdemeanor. He can't go to diversion because the headway collects restitution for us.
So once you're 18, you're subject to the adult.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But-
they're adults.
But what's really nice is that RJCA really started as an adult diversion program with Minneapolis. And what that has allowed us to do is that there are some cases where there's an 18-year-old, we just have one right now, there's an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old involved in the same incident, school incident. We're able to talk to the city attorney's office, said, can that adult youth be part of this process? So we've been able, when we've seen that from the MPD cases, we've been able to pull them back and get the adult offender also involved in diversion so that it's a two-for rather than just, one not being eligible but the other. So that relationship with adult and youth diversion has been very helpful in that.
My other question was, can you give an example of a offense where someone might be arrested but not charged?
It's two different concepts, and one is, I was a homicide detective for about 12 and a half years, so we have probable cause to arrest somebody. But the county attorney's office, to make a charging decision, if the, like on a theft, we'll say, like on a theft case, if the victim of the theft has moved out of state and is not willing to come back and be a victim then they won't be able to charge that case because they know that the victim won't come back and be a victim in the prosecution. So that's the difference with legal sufficiency versus probable cause.
Like in the county attorney's office, as I said earlier, the county attorney, whether it's adult, juvenile, child protection, they make the decision to charge or not charge. So police report, as Captain saying, police report, county attorney look at it and decide to charge. You have lawyers look at various things, decide to charge or not charge a case. So it's, it's an interesting process. But like what he said earlier, so they may get a case, kids earlier, that we never see. Because they're doing their diversion program. The success completed, end of story. So nobody's charged.
Just see a hand up. I saw this one first and then you did this one.
So when you were, had the numbers up for percentages broken down by Black, Native, and mixed race,
Yep.
when you increase, or you said like they would have 2 or more, like a
Prior misdemeanor
prior
adjudications.
misdemeanors. Have you been able to pull out, so there's like, I saw like there was obviously a huge difference, like going from 80% down to 50-something% for mixed race, but it was a drop with Native and Black, but like why such like a smaller gap compared to the other group? Like have you been able
One was
to-
30%, one was 10%.
Yeah, I mean, 'cause
That's
it's
just
like-
how the numbers came out. We couldn't
Okay,
statistically
okay,
say
it's like
why
that.
that happened,
Okay.
is that we just moved the needle by
Okay.
changing that one criteria point.
Okay, and like has there ever been talk with like moving the needle again? Just to see.
We
if
look
there
at all
is a
our
difference?
diversion criteria.
Yeah.
We meet quarterly with
Okay.
our diversion group,
Okay.
which everybody here, and we do look at our diversion criteria, and then the more data and then we just started keeping this data, what, 4 years ago?
Yeah.
About 4 years ago. We just started pulling this data.
Okay.
Before there was, I'll be honest, when I first started with the diversion program, and when we rebuilt it, one of the reasons I rebuilt it is because we had no idea what we were doing. I asked our diversion person back then, how many kids do we have in diversion today? Well, I don't know. It was very loose record keeping. So once we redeveloped our diversion program with what we can do better, and like I said, when we moved from 1 to 2 prior misdemeanor adjudications, and not to belabor into a deeper subject, I'll be honest with you, the county attorney's office, not Willie, but somebody from the county attorney's office wasn't real excited about us doing it because of different issues that they were seeing. But we try to just, and that was my decision. It was like, well, I'm gonna try it and see what happens. And we moved that dial enough that I think it was, knock on wood, it was a good decision, but I make one once in a while. But it really helped us out. But we look at those diversion criteria every quarter when we get together. We start talking about this stuff again and see what we can do differently. But we really do it from a data-informed perspective.
Carol touched base on it earlier. Carol mentioned JDI, that all the systems from the police department, county attorneys, public defender, diversion. I don't know if you want to address any more of that or say a little bit more about JDI.
What would you like me to say?
You know, I mean, how JDI came about, looking at the disparity among minorities, yeah.
Right. So we talked a little bit about, how it came to the probation or the juvenile services is that we had, in 2005, in Hennepin County, our juvenile detention center on an average day had over 100 youth, young people in detention. That was more than the population should have been. And what we were realizing at that time is that a lot of the kids there were there for reasons that were what we would call petty offenses, absenting home, things that they weren't necessarily public safety risks. They might have been risks to themselves, but that really wasn't the detention criteria. And in looking at that data, again, what we saw was there was a disproportionate number of youth of color that were in the detention center. And what we've been focusing on and what we've really been doing for the past number of years is looking at how does that happen? And how does that happen and making sure that all of our system partners are at the table so that we're working on that together. As we've continued to grow in probation with the Juvenile Detention Alternatives Initiative, we're now switching our focus a little bit. We're really focusing on racial equity, still looking at where are our disparities, and looking at out-of-home placement now as well. But it starts with that police department, the police officer that makes that arrest, what choices do they have, and how do we all work together along that system continuum so that we're doing the right thing.
And something a little bit in addition to that, what a lot of cases are happening right now, what's the courts are deciding to do with some of the clients is instead of adjudicating them delinquent, where they end up having these offenses on their record, they'll allow the kids to have a stay of adjudication. So again, those conditions that I talked about earlier that the courts can ask a client to do, as long as they get those conditions met within a certain amount of time, then they have an opportunity to not have those offenses be on their record. So a little bit, it's not necessarily diversion, but it's something that gives these kids an opportunity to say, oops, I made a mistake, even though I did commit this felony offense, this gross misdemeanor or misdemeanor. If I do this and get it done and do what the courts have asked me, I have an opportunity for this not to be on my record.
And we go back to why is it important for a youth not to have a felony adjudication? Does anyone know the reasons or have some idea why a youth wouldn't want a felony adjudication on their record?
I guess I just see it as you don't want that following you for the rest of your life.
Exactly.
Correct. Unfortunately.
Yeah, so jobs, 2 adjudications can impact if you were to get into some difficulties as an adult. Adjudications can also impact if, let's say you're 13 or 14 years old and you have adjudicated delinquencies, and at 15 or 16 you find yourself in another situation where you've committed a felony level offense. Those 2 prior felony adjudications plus the charge you're pending could lead the county attorney's office to file a motion for certification, meaning going over to adult court, or an extended jurisdiction juvenile motion, meaning that you're on probation to 21, like Lena talked about. So again, that's not something that youth want to have on their record are those felony adjudications.
In addition to that, just as someone who's worked in that system in the past and through a new program that we're working with, the group violence intervention strategy, what a lot of guys are seeing is with the increase in technology and background checks, some of that stuff pops up that used to be sealed. Like if you just were petitioning the county to get that information, they could ensure that it didn't get included. but with technology, it comes up anyways. So guys who technically, or girls, you know, it should be sealed for, let's say, a job application, or the military is also a big barrier. A lot of times people are like, oh, I'm gonna go to the Air Force, they get very far in the process, and all of a sudden they get rejected at that last step because that comes up. So there are real life consequences for things that, as a 13, 14, 15-year-old seem really minor, that if they're not dealt with in a particular way, can really have some negative consequences later in life, so.
And one of the things has nothing to do with diversion. Are you familiar with expungement hearing? You guys are most, yes, no, some of you? Because like now, they just start doing expungement hearings the last couple of years, actually. And it's usually young adults want to get their record clean, wipe it out, get it off, and so forth. And they present, which is interesting, they present, you know, they can represent themselves, hire an attorney. I've sent in a couple of those. And the court goes back and look at the records 5 or 6 years. And a lot of people come there, it's wiped clean. And some people come there and they've said, oh, I'm doing really good. And the officers have done research, well, you just got, you had another felony, such and such, 2 or 3 years ago. That's something that you didn't have in juvenile, but the last 3 or 4 years, we have the expungement hearing that young people can clear, you know, clear the slate and start over. Especially if they stay clean, they've gone, got their act together. And only thing that won't get clear is a sexual assault. That's gonna be there for a while. So.
And I think it's important also here is, quite honestly, is we're talking about juvenile diversion opportunities in juvenile in the justice system. But most of us meet in different committees all the time. We spend a lot of time in different meetings. Part of JDAI's subgroup, Eliminating Racial Disparities, Willie and I, and we've been a part of those groups too, really so working together as a system to try to better the outcomes for these kids in our community.
And you may have noticed Bruce and I are very outspoken, so we speak our mind. We ask a lot of why questions. Why are we doing this?
Another question here.
Yeah, so I'm a librarian with Hennepin County Libraries, and so we have a lot of youth in our buildings all the time. And so one of the things, currently what's in place, you know, because we have county officers and contracted officers in most of our libraries, but not all. And so currently, you know, a lot of behavior is addressed through trespassing. And so a couple of things, I have a question about trespasses. One is if those trespasses that are issued in like library buildings or by county officers or contracted officers, if those follow youth around or if they come up, you know, like if they're in court or things like that. And then my other question, it's not really a question, but it's like we're also trying to make a movement of doing more restorative justice work or transformative justice in libraries, especially working with youth. And so we're going to be moving kind of a pilot forward with trying to bring in more of like a process of offering other options for youth besides just getting trespassed. You know, a lot of kids are there every day, you know, most days of the week, or there for a significant amount of time until they move or something like that. But so I guess anybody has any thoughts about how to help us make that successful? Because the library is really unique. A lot of times we don't have contact with caregivers, and so it's really just working with the kids. And then back to the question about trespasses and if those follow kids around.
Well, one of the things about trespassing, it's not a crime, it's a status offense. And that's the difference in status. If the kid stays out of trouble, it doesn't go away, actually. You pick up the two status, if they were to become adjudicated delinquent if you're found guilty. So that's a status offense. That's least serious. And we do get those in court.
So what was that? I'm sorry, that was 3?
If you get two found guilty, okay, you get 2, you get that third one you picked up, then it becomes adjudicated delinquent. But those 2 are status offenses. So they're not crimes. A lot of people think, like certain thing on the petty calendar, it's a status offense, it's not a crime. You pick up that third one, found guilty, then it becomes adjudicated delinquent if you're found guilty. Does that make sense? But we do get trespassing, and we do divert those trespassing cases that we get, because we have the whole, you know, Hennepin County, and we see them trespassing at the store, trespassing at Target, trespassing everywhere. And
I
we
think
try to
your question
divert
is
it.
about like if you're repeat trespassing kids, how long does it take before they get adjudicated delinquent?
Yeah.
You gotta pick up 3. You gotta pick up 3.
And so then it can come up.
because you just don't want to be, you know, the kids that we see are 11, 12, 13 years old.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, these are young kids, and, you know, you got kids, you know, 11, 12, 13, you got to tell them 50,000 times before they get it.
Yeah.
You know, but and it does, you know, the stores complain, everyone complains. But you're not gonna lock a kid up. What are you gonna do with trespassing? You can tell them, they can still do it. You know, there's really limited what you do with trespassing.
You know, I think, what do we see in Minneapolis? Mostly our kids that we're getting through the diversion, theft and
Yeah.
assault fives.
Yeah.
The fighting.
Assault or disorderly conduct.
And the disorderly conduct, which is the fighting.
Yeah.
Usually it's the theft, low-level thefts, shoplifting type thefts and stuff. Fighting, assault 5 fighting, and then disorderly conduct, which is also usually a
Gets
fighting.
pled down from a different.
Well, it's not even pled down, it's,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna arrest you for assault, you're being disorderly, and they arrest you for that too. So those are kind of fighting and low-level theft. Thinking back to when you were a kid, or when I was a kid, what are the things that got you in the most hot water with your parents? If you did something really, back then it was, this is really bad. I stole something, or I got to go fight with somebody. And those are the things that got you in the most trouble. And they're still just mistakes that kids make. And we just don't want to criminalize these kids and have them carry a record for, quite honestly, doing what I did when I was a kid. It got taken care of at home in different ways when I was a kid too.
When the kid comes to court for trespassing, judge, you know, the judge is like, hey, what can we do with this kid? Because sometimes it's all trespassing. And they go to the same place over and over again. They're told to stay away, and they still go. And it's what I've seen, it's those 11, 12, 13-year-old kids, you know.
But
Even
in line
then, the
with what
courts
you're
aren't the
talking about.
answer to that problem.
Court isn't.
Because they don't have that,
No.
the resources,
No, not
or
for
the
that.
answer to it. They don't, not an
So
answer.
what do you suggest? What do you think should be done? I'm curious.
About
The trespassing.
behavior for you?
Yeah.
Well, I think that what we're trying to do is offer more, and it's hard because we're kind of in two different pillars. So we have county, you know, we really don't have any say of what the security does, even though we're trying to build those communications between the two departments better, so we can work together better and more effectively. And so we're hoping to, we're going to try a pilot for like 20 months, and it's based, I actually worked with Cynthia, we had an issue come up at my library that involved multiple kids fighting. It's a very large fight, and ended up working with our JCA as the victim of the library, and that was last year. And so then we now are hoping, we're gonna have 3 libraries, Franklin, Sumner, and Weber Park, to try to bring in more of like a circle process and have more of a discussion quality with working and with youth, as well as being able to identify sort of the harm that was done, because that's part of it sometimes. Just, but so we're hoping to actually try to get staff in that too. So we're going to bring the circle process as staff to try to make it familiar to everybody, so staff can also be on board with it and hopefully change some of that organizational culture. And then also have the opportunity, to be able to have security allow us to work better with youth too, so they aren't jumping in. And like at my library, we have a really great officer during the day who's, you know, and we're like, don't ever trespass any youth without talking to us first. But it's a lot of relationship building, and it takes a lot of time.
Can I ask a question? Do you guys still have the volunteer program for young kids in that age group? Because I remember they had a program when I was, it's like in the 90s, like where you could volunteer and you like put books away, like you're like a little volunteer library.
Absolutely, yeah.
And like I stuck with that till they were like, okay, you're too old now. You know? But you know, and it was like I was like probably 12 to 14, you know, and it gave me something to do during the summer and
Yeah.
didn't fall in,
We
you know,
absolutely.
into trouble, but yeah.
Yep, so we do have a lot of volunteer programs for teens, and we do get some community service work too that you can come and do in our libraries. And we actually hire teens to work. We on youth tech squads, and some libraries have teen specialists, so we try to help also support youth in building job skills and doing that. So, it's.
Because I mean, that's how I found out. I didn't know about it. It was just one of those, you're here a lot. be doing something.
You're here, we're pushing the work while you're here.
Yeah, so it's just kind of like, okay, well,
Give
you're
you something to
trespassing
do.
a lot, well, I'm gonna give you something to do.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, absolutely.
You guys were in a very unique position. You were one of the original providers when we were doing diversion. We had, the court would order the kid to go to the libraries around the county. We had several, and they would order to do 12 hours, 15 hours of community service, but they had to go to the library. One of the things we found out when kids were doing that, the kids was introduced to the library. They end up being involved with the library, actually getting a library card, and they seem to have more responsibility. And that was a very good program because the kids were learning something. They were learning how to use the library.
Last summer, we had 2 of our SROs that was their summer engagement strategy, was they spent all summer going to the different libraries to have youth engagement.
How did that work? Like, what was the outcome?
It went well for them. They met a lot of kids that they, through the school year, and followed up with them. Then they'd also do some home checks too.
Is there other questions from the audience? So as a moderator, I had one question that came up in my mind, and that was really about people who don't take the opportunity for diversion. So because I think it might be useful for this demographic of folks who work directly with young people. Like, when you get that citation in the mail that says, come to court for diversion, or call this number for diversion, and people either, parents think, pay the citation so I don't have to go to court, or ignore it. What are some of the ramifications that come from that? Just so that folks here can be educated, so they can encourage their clients, if that happens, to take advantage of the opportunity.
I think one of the things, at least we've been talking about this, and obviously some other folks too, is to really explain to the community what diversion is all about. Because there's lack of information. That's what I've seen. It's explaining to parents, this is what diversion is all about. This is what this means. They can help you with some things and address that. But it's really about informing the family about whether it's the Minneapolis Police Diversion, whether it's the county diversion program. When that's what we're trying to do, is get the word out. We're all at an event. We were at an event last weekend. We had the round table all
Oh, last week, yeah, out at Sabathani.
And really, really trying to get the information out. This is what in the community, and you guys are the voices out there. You're out in the community, you see these kids, whether it's at the library or whatever, and you see parents. Explain to them about diversion, because it's not going to go away.
Right, it doesn't go
the
away.
The citation does not. Once we get in the office, it's not going to go away.
And the one thing, talking about being in different groups, it came out of one of the first meetings we had that I attended with the Eliminating Racial Disparities group at JDAI, is when you stood up and started telling them what we're doing in Minneapolis Police Department. We're talking with other system professionals and stuff there, and people are going, I didn't know you did that. And you're going, there's a lot of great work being done, but nobody knows about it. It's not that great if nobody knows what you're doing. And the more that we get out there and tell people what is juvenile diversion, what is the county attorney's diversion, what are the goals, how do we all work together, the more the community learns this, the more that when they get a diversion letter or a phone call saying, hey, your son or daughter did something, they're eligible for diversion, the more people know about what it is, the more we'll get participation. Because quite honestly, once they participate in diversion, anecdotally, they're successful. They really do well once they come through the program. So, and we look at 50% of the kids that are eligible for it never enroll in it for a variety of reasons. A lot is no contact. That's something that we can own and try to do better at. But some of it's just because people don't know what we're doing. And the more we can inform our communities of what diversion is and the benefits of it, I think the better participation rates we'll get. And once again, once they participate, they get successful. It really helps these kids out.